I was returning home after school when a boy started following me closely. For several days now, he had been persistently chasing after me. He called out to me in a loud, teasing voice and recited words full of affection. I tried my best to ignore him, but even today, when the same thing occurred, my heart compelled me to stop and turn around to ask him what it was that he truly wanted. I thought to myself, if this is some kind of overwhelming, stormy love, then why not propose marriage? After all, I too wished to get married. I was a young girl of 24 years, and my youth had become a burden for me. Sometimes being beautiful itself becomes a trial, a challenge that tests you. I had experienced such a situation before, when my beauty had turned into a source of hardship. But as soon as I halted and turned to face him in order to ask my questions, he became visibly flustered. Startled by my sudden stop, he ran away so quickly that I was left in a state of astonishment. In that fleeting moment, my smile vanished completely. He did not have even the slightest courage to stand and face me. Even a brief glance from me was enough to reveal that he was utterly unnerved. Honestly, I have never liked men who behave in such a way. Those who attempt to prove their masculinity by mere running away do not appeal to me at all. I longed instead for a man who was strong and could fulfill every wish and desire of mine. Thus I quickened my pace and hurried back to my home. The heat was so intense that my entire body became drenched in sweat. I removed my shawl and tossed it aside, then stood before the mirror. My clothes were clinging to me, and the beads of sweat on my face made it look as if my skin were exposed, like a person stripped bare. Even though my condition was far from perfect, and I felt terribly disheveled, I continued to gaze at my reflection. In that state, I still found myself very beautiful. I knew that I possessed every ounce of feminine grace, yet I was deeply troubled by my circumstances. I was tired of my youth, feeling that it had become nothing but a burden, for the reality of life was as it was. At the age of 24, no one was considering marriage for me, and no suitable proposals were coming my way. It was not enough to be beautiful anymore. In this day and age, the boy's family scrutinizes a girl's background. They consider what dowry might be given and how much support the in-laws would provide their son, among many other things. Moreover, I was an orphan, a girl without the protection or shadow of a father, and I earned my living by teaching. Because of this, my own mother was not in favor of my marriage at all. Even if a somewhat suitable proposal arrived, my mother herself would reject it immediately. This is one of the reasons why I grew increasingly frustrated with my own youth. At school, when I saw other teachers, I would notice that some of them were getting engaged, or that someone's marriage was already fixed. In weddings, people would be busy discussing the details of the ceremonies and the preparations. I would sit there silently, watching them with wistful eyes, knowing deep down that such things were never written in my destiny. I carried the heavy burden of responsibilities for my mother and my home. I had to shoulder these duties alone. If I were to get married, what would become of my mother? That was the very reason why marriage was almost impossible for me. I would look into the mirror and curse my misfortune, lamenting my bad fate. When my mother called me for dinner, I flatly refused to go. My heart had grown numb to everything. I felt as though I could no longer care about anything at all. Quietly, I washed my face and lay down on my bed to sleep. But inside, a tumult of emotions churned relentlessly. I tossed and turned in bed, restless and agitated, my mind unable to find peace. I wondered what might have been if at the right time I had been married off to a good man, a man who would accept not only me, but also my mother as his own. Perhaps then I would not have been plagued by such loneliness, nor would I have been overwhelmed by the isolation that now consumed me. I might not have felt as if I were burning in the unbearable flames of solitude. Indeed, the emergence of emotions in a person is natural. But with time, everyone comes to dread the overwhelming weight of these very feelings. Thus, I lay there pondering the cruel twists of fate, feeling both the bitterness of loneliness and the sting of unfulfilled desires. The very beauty that had once been my pride now seemed to trap me in a web of unmet expectations and societal constraints. Every day, I faced the reality that I was not given the chance to experience the love and partnership that many of my peers enjoyed. And so, with each restless night, my heart ached for a life that might have been, a life where I was cherished and where I could share my dreams without fear. In that moment, as I lay in bed amidst the swirling emotions and the harsh reality of my existence, I couldn't help but wonder if fate had dealt me a cruel hand. The questions kept echoing in my mind. What if I had met a man who truly cared for both me and my mother? What if my beauty had been a blessing instead of a burden? Such thoughts offered only a fleeting comfort in the darkness of my solitude, leaving me to confront the cold truth that sometimes life is not fair. That's why both girls and boys are commanded to marry early, although nowadays very few people understand this principle. I struggled with my inner battles for a while, and before long, I fell asleep. In the evening, I was awakened by the sound of Owais's voice. Owais was a 15-year-old boy who lived in our neighborhood. My mother often assigned him various tasks, both big and small, and even now he was at our home. Certainly my mother had called him here. I never particularly liked Owais. Even now, just hearing his voice filled me with irritation. He would come to our house, and my mother would immediately seat him in the front courtyard. He was a strange, lazy, and rather useless boy, which was why he ended up doing all the errands for my mother. In my laziness, I stepped out from my room with my dupatta still wrapped about me and looked at him, asking, "What are you doing here?" He lowered his eyes and replied, "Baji Shamim, Auntie has called me. She needs me to place an order." I glared at my mother in anger and said, "Why didn't you tell me? You always say you will pick me up when I return from school." My mother shook her head and said, "I have told you 1,000 times. You always insist that I shouldn't be burdened with work. I am too tired. I don't even have the strength to stand in the market. Now poor Owais is doing the work, so you should not be troubled by it." Then my mother handed Owais an order slip along with some money. After he left, she added, "If you find Owais so unbearable, at least control your manners, even if it is just about your dupatta." Hearing her words, I burst into laughter and retorted, "I don't even look at young boys. What could this child possibly notice? Because of this poverty, my beauty and my youth have become utterly wasted." I let loose all the fire burning inside me in front of my mother. On hearing my words, my mother fell silent. She knew very well what I desired, but what I wanted was something that she could never arrange. She was never in favor of my marriage in any way. And so, I went back to my room and locked myself in. Life continued in this same manner. These were just the usual routines. One day when I reached home, I was astonished to see tears in my mother's eyes as she hurriedly rewrapped her dupatta and stepped out. I asked her, "Where are you going in this heat, and why are you crying?" My mother replied, "Poor Owais's mother has passed away. She had no one but her own mother, and now what is he supposed to do alone?" My mother was deeply pained by his loss, and I looked at her in amazement. For some reason, my mother felt such deep sympathy for Owais, such love that she herself shed tears for his sorrow. Then my mother said to me, "Come along. He is a neighbor who cares for us so well. It is only natural for you to share in his grief." I folded my hands in supplication and said, "In this heat, you go attend the funeral. I am going to sleep." My mother gave me a cool, reproachful look and then left the house. I felt neither any pity for Owais nor any sorrow for his mother's death. I thought to myself, what does he have to do with me? At that time, I was extremely tired and just wanted to sleep, so I went straight to my room and lay down. Later that evening, when I awoke again, I heard strange voices echoing through the house. I stepped out of my room and saw that a couple of neighborhood women were sitting with my mother. As soon as they saw me, smiles spread across all their faces, and then they began congratulating me. I looked at those women in utter surprise, wondering what there was to be congratulated about. One of them exclaimed, "Congratulations! Your mother has finalized your marriage. Your wedding is scheduled for next week. Soon you too shall become a bride." At that moment, it felt as though the very ground beneath my feet gave way. I looked at my mother in disbelief, asking, "What is this all about? Where did this talk of my marriage come from? Weren't you just at Owais's mother's funeral?" My mother, her eyes downcast, replied softly, "Make some tea, please, and let's talk calmly." Thus, while I stood there confused, the women continued to chatter excitedly, congratulating me as if my destiny had suddenly husband might provide. I had longed for a kind of love that could lift me out of the oppressive isolation that had defined my existence. Yet society and my own family had always insisted that I was destined to remain alone because of my background and the responsibilities that weighed me down. The conversation around me only deepened my inner turmoil. As the women discussed my impending marriage with an air of celebration, I could not shake the feeling that this was yet another imposition, a decision made for me by others, rather than one I had chosen for myself. The idea that my future was being decided while I remained silent and isolated was a bitter pill to swallow. With each passing moment, I felt the weight of my circumstances press down upon me. I longed for freedom, for a chance to choose my own path, yet I was trapped by duty, by the expectations of my family, and by the relentless march of time that showed no mercy to my hopes and dreams. In that moment, as the congratulatory voices faded into the background, I retreated back into my room, overwhelmed by a sense of loss and despair. That night, as I lay in bed, I could not help but wonder about the future that awaited me. A future where my beauty and youth, once my greatest assets, had become nothing more than a curse. The silent, oppressive darkness of my room mirrored the heavy burden in my heart, and I drifted off into a troubled sleep, haunted by the conflicting emotions of longing and resignation. But those women refused to have any tea and then left. It seemed as if everyone had gathered right there immediately after the funeral. As soon as they departed, I stood before Mother and demanded, "What is this all about, Mother?" She replied, "Daughter, I have finalized your marriage with Owais. In fact, after your mother's death, he was completely alone. There was no one to support him from either side. He is a very good boy who needed support. Now that you are to be married to him, I will keep him right here. He lives in a rented house, and his mother, in one way or another, was managing the expenses. At this time, we need Owais. He is only 15 years old. How is he supposed to manage alone at his age?" Upon hearing Mother's words, it felt as if the sky had fallen upon my head. I screamed in anger and shouted at her, "I have been waiting for my marriage for such a long time, and you never thought any proposal was suitable for me. And now with a 15-year-old boy, how could you possibly finalize my marriage? How did Owais become so important to you that, without even consulting me, you took such a momentous decision regarding my life? Don't you know that I am 24 years old and he is only 15? He is just a wayward, immature boy with no future. Am I expected to spend my whole life catering to both you and him? I have already taken responsibility for everything." I continued speaking, every word spilling out from my mouth as my anger surged. Meanwhile, tears began streaming from Mother's eyes. She said, "If our expenses are not being taken care of by you, then don't worry. I will manage the household chores and even handle the house myself. But I cannot leave Owais all alone. He has done so much for me. And without marrying you, I cannot keep him in this house. If I were to keep a non-man around with my daughter, the world would never let me live. Owais means more to me than even my own sons. If I had a son, perhaps he would not care for me as much as he does. Whenever you are not at home, he takes care of me, whether it is taking me to the hospital, bringing me medicine, or even fetching groceries. He has always stood in for my own mother. So now, with his mother gone, how can I leave him alone? If you do not marry him, then I will leave this house and go live with him." "That is my final decision," she declared. Mother had threatened me in such a strange, bizarre manner that I could only stand there astonished, wondering what ghost had possessed her mind. Mother was overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down her face. I fell silent, deciding that I would find an opportunity later in the day to make her understand. I was young and I had my own feelings about marriage, some desires and dreams that perhaps even Owais could not fulfill. Yet how could Mother be so cruel to me? For 2 days I did not say a word to her about this, and Mother appeared very happy, as if she believed that I had consented to it. But after 2 days passed, I attempted, with love and tenderness, to explain to her that this was a mismatched union, one that I could not possibly endure. However, Mother flatly replied that she had already finalized the match. The entire neighborhood had come to know about it because she had announced it on the day of the funeral. There was nothing that could be done now. Hearing her words, I clutched my head in despair and then decided that I would speak to Owais. I resolved that I would tell him, in no uncertain terms, so bluntly that he would eventually renounce the idea. That very evening, when I left the house to go shopping for groceries, several women in the street stopped me, not only offering their congratulations on the marriage proposal, but also laughing at me and making derisive remarks about my character. Their mocking laughter enraged me beyond measure. I knew very well the reason for their scorn. They all understood that a match with a boy like Owais was neither a mark of success nor a cause for happiness. He could neither provide me with a good life, nor could our union endure for a long time. And yet there was one thing that Mother just could not understand. Then without warning, those women, still chattering, suddenly refused to drink any tea and left abruptly. It was as though, after the funeral, everyone had gathered here and simply sat down. As soon as they left, I stood in front of Mother and demanded, "What is the meaning of all this, Mother?" Mother replied in a measured tone, "Daughter, I have already fixed your marriage with Owais. Ever since your mother died, he was left completely alone. There was no one to support him. He is a very good boy who needed guidance. Now that you are to be married, I will keep him here. He lives in a rented house and his mother somehow managed the expenses. At this time, we need Owais. He is only 15 years old. How is he supposed to manage on his own at that age?" My heart pounded in fury, and I screamed at her, "I have been waiting for my marriage for so long, and you never thought any proposal was suitable for me. And now how can you finalize my marriage with a 15-year-old boy? How did Owais become so important to you that, without asking me, you made such a life-changing decision? Do you not know that I am 24 years old and he is merely 15? He is just a wayward boy with no future. Am I expected to support both you and him all my life? I have already managed everything on my own." I don't know what qualities she saw in Owais that no one else could perceive. And then, the next day after school, I went straight to Owais's place. When I entered his house, I found him sitting alone, silently weeping, completely withdrawn and looking very frightened. I sat beside him. Seeing his condition, I postponed any intention to get angry and decided instead to speak to him gently. I folded my hands in front of him and said, "Owais, how can I marry you? You are far too young. There is no match between us." He did not answer my words at all. He just burst into uncontrollable sobbing. He cried so fiercely that I could not say another word. I simply placed my hand on his shoulder and comforted him, casting a glance at that empty house where besides Owais there was no one, and then I returned. In that moment, the world of my heart changed completely. One can never think only about oneself. Sometimes one must also think about another. And this was the very moment when I started thinking about Owais. He was only 15 years old. If Mother and I had not supported him, if we had left him alone, he might have gotten involved in some wrongful act or fallen into the wrong crowd. His whole life could have been ruined, and in the state in which I had left him, he might even have become mentally ill. I had agreed to the marriage, to be wed, by Mother, and upon hearing this, Mother was very happy. In the presence of several neighbors, my marriage with Owais was solemnized. On Mother's command, he quietly accepted the marriage, and then he came to our house. I was not sent away. Rather, Mother brought Owais into our home because this is our private house, while Owais and his mother live in a rented house. Mother told me, "He is now your husband. It is your duty to honor him and take care of him." I remained silent at Mother's words. She left Owais in my room and went to her own room, and a heavy silence fell between us. He was completely silent, standing there frightened and timid. I signaled for him to sit on the bed, and he sat down. Then he began apologizing to me. Perhaps he realized that I was not happy about this marriage. I scolded him and said, "Our marriage is now complete. It is our duty to honor this relationship. Forget every word of the past." Hearing this, he became happy. I was not prepared like ordinary brides. Yet I had still worn nice clothes, adorned myself with jewelry, and applied a little makeup. I thought that, like a normal marriage, Owais would compliment me, talk to me, or even desire closeness with me. But at that moment, I was utterly astonished when he picked up his pillow and went to the sofa, then lay there for the entire night. I lay silently on my bed. I did not have the courage to tell him that he could sleep with me in our bed. I felt some shame, and I also wanted to give him time so that he might recover from the shock of his mother's death. But I passed that entire night with great difficulty, for as soon as the marriage was solemnized, I had accepted Owais, and now I longed for his closeness. My desires kept growing, yet Owais lay with his face turned away from me. The next morning when he woke, he came to me and said, "I want to study, but until now, because of our circumstances, I haven't been able to." My mother struggled greatly to manage the household expenses. Whenever I suggested that I should work, Mother would forbid me. I was her only son. She did not want to see me pushed around on the streets. That is why I had never been allowed to take any job. But now I do not wish to be a burden on you. I want to attend school in the morning and work in the evening. If you support me, I will be able to stand on my own feet. When I first listened to him, I realized that he was not a lost or wayward child at all. Instead, he was a very sensitive and responsible young man. For a long time, I had assumed he was aimless, perhaps even a bit of a troublemaker. But then I began to understand that maybe his mother's overwhelming affection had, in her own way, left him unable to take initiative. It seemed that by always caring for him too much, she had unintentionally made him dependent, so that he never learned to manage life on his own. Hearing his quiet, humble words filled me with joy. I told him, "I will have you admitted to my own school." I explained that if he wanted to work part-time, I could arrange a position for him at a nearby medical store so that he could earn enough to cover his expenses. I added, "When some time passes and you become capable, you can even help pay for my costs." His face lit up with an open smile, as if the thought of having someone believe in him made him feel important. I too felt happy and hopeful. Soon after, I spoke with the school's headmistress and got him enrolled in the 9th grade. At home, I started tutoring him every night. Although he attended school during the day, after classes he would go to the medical store. I noticed that he was very responsible in all he did and that he worked hard in his studies. However, there was one problem. He had a peculiar difficulty with remembering things. It seemed as if he had left his books unopened for too long, and when he finally started to study seriously, his memory did not cooperate as well as I would have hoped. I devoted a great deal of time and attention to him, trying many different methods to help him learn. Despite his evident hard work, his test scores were not improving, and his memory continued to fail him at important moments. I found myself scolding him sometimes because I was frustrated by the slow progress. One day, overwhelmed by the same recurring problem, I discussed his situation with one of my teachers. She suggested that I speak with a wise healer, a hakim, who was known for his powerful remedies. "This man has a unique talent," she said. "Whatever medicine he gives works wonders. I am sure that once you give him this remedy, his mind will grow stronger very quickly." I remembered that I had even given the same medicine to my own child, who had grown remarkably smart after following the hakim's advice. I wondered if the shock of his mother's death might be the reason why he was unable to concentrate like other children. With hope in my heart, I went with a close friend to see the hakim. There I obtained a special medicine, often referred to as the strength booster. Every night without fail, I mixed a dose of this medicine with milk and gave it to him. In just a few days, I began to see a remarkable change. Slowly, his memory improved, even if just a little at first. Then, almost imperceptibly, a significant transformation occurred. His mind, which once seemed fragile, became noticeably stronger. So much so that it even began to affect our nights. There were evenings when he would start recalling things so vividly and so forcefully that my sleep was abruptly interrupted. I would awaken, unsettled by the sudden burst of memories. Yet each time he would simply smile and step out of the room as if he were pleased with his progress. One evening after a particularly restless night, I gently told him, "You do not need to leave the room. Your leaving upsets my sleep." But I made sure he understood that I was not angry with him at all. I was actually delighted that he was working so hard. In that moment, I realized that Owais was not at all the carefree, irresponsible boy I had once imagined. In fact, I felt a pang of regret and even shame for having once dismissed him as a lazy or useless child. Time moved on quickly. In the span of just 2 years, not only had Owais matured tremendously, but our relationship had also deepened into a marital bond. I came to understand that he was a complete and capable human being in every way. All he needed was love and attention, a love that I and even his late mother in spirit were able to provide him. He proved to everyone that he was by no means inferior to anyone else. When the results of the 10th grade examinations were announced, he topped the entire district, a feat that left no one in doubt about his potential. That day, my joy was immeasurable. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride for him. People who had once laughed at our relationship or made fun of our unusual bond were left astonished. Owais' hard work and dedication had shown that nothing is impossible if one is willing to strive for it. His success was celebrated in a formal ceremony where he was awarded several prizes, and most notably, he was given a medal. On the very same day, as soon as he returned home, he placed that medal around my neck. In that gesture, I felt victorious and uplifted, as if the triumph was shared between us. I have always believed that husband and wife are like two garments worn by the same person, inseparable and perfectly matched. A marital relationship is not something that can easily be broken because the union of two people is destined by nature. In many cultures, saying that a couple is mismatched is akin to disrespecting the divine order. Thus, such harsh words should never be spoken. Today, Owais and I live a good life together. He has completed his intermediate education and now works diligently while continuing his studies. I still teach at school, but now I feel no bitterness or discouragement as I once did. Instead, I find great joy in my work, knowing that Owais is a constant source of support and happiness in my life. I have come to believe that every person has the power to change someone else's life for the better. If you ever have the opportunity to help improve another person's life, do not let that chance slip away. Who knows? Perhaps your kindness might be the very reason that someone's destiny changes for the better. It is possible that Allah has chosen you as a means to bring about that positive change. Always be ready to devote yourself to the service of others. This is what true humanity is all about, and it is also one of the most important lessons taught by our Islam. In reflecting on my journey with Owais, I realize how transformative compassion and a little bit of faith can be. I once doubted his potential, but by giving him the chance to improve, by encouraging him to study, and by seeking help from those who could assist us, I witnessed a miracle in his growth. His transformation was not merely academic. It was a renewal of spirit, a sign that even those who seem to struggle can overcome obstacles when supported with love and genuine care. Every evening as I sat with him during our nightly study sessions, I saw the gradual sharpening of his mind. Each new memory and every small victory and understanding brought him closer to the bright future he deserved. I learned that sometimes a person's early challenges are not signs of weakness, but rather signals that they require a different kind of attention. With patience, the right guidance, and timely help, even the most difficult obstacles can be overcome. Now, as we live together and build our life, I carry with me the lesson that every individual deserves a chance. No one should be dismissed as incapable or unworthy before their potential is fully understood. Owais' journey reminds me every day that a little care and a timely intervention can lead to extraordinary change. It is a lesson in humanity, in faith, and in the power of unwavering support. I hope that everyone who reads this story will take to heart the idea that when you are given the opportunity to help someone, you are not just improving one life. You might be changing the course of destiny itself. In a world where many are quick to judge, let us remember that love, patience, and kindness are the true measures of a person's worth. And in that spirit, let us always be ready to serve others, for that is the very essence of our shared humanity in the teachings of Islam.